Where the light comes in. Part 1, The House on the Hill. The house was too quiet. Lena hadn't spoken out loud in days. Her voice felt like a distant memory, tucked away behind closed windows and curtains that blocked out the sun. The old wooden floors creaked with every step, as if protesting her presence. Dust gathered on the shelves, the books, even the glass figurines her mother had once polished every Sunday afternoon. It had been 6 months since the accident. 6 months since Lena had packed her life into 4 cardboard boxes and moved into the house her grandmother left her. 6 months since she had walked away from the hospital with no one waiting outside. No one to say, "It's going to be okay." Because it wasn't. Not then. Not yet. The cottage sat at the edge of a sleepy coastal town, far from the city, from memories that haunted every corner of her old apartment. Lena thought distance might soften the pain, that silence might heal what no words could. But the pain had followed her, not loudly, but persistently, like the sea wind that whispered through the cracks in the windows at night. She made tea in the mornings out of habit, never finishing the cup. She wrote to-do lists on yellow notepads and never checked a single thing off. She stood on the porch sometimes and watched the path that wound down toward town, but never walked it. She existed, but only barely. Then, one morning, something changed. It was subtle, a soft tap at the door, just as she was settling into the threadbare armchair by the window. Lena paused. She wasn't expecting anyone. She rarely received mail. The last person she had spoken to in person had been the old man from the grocery store, weeks ago. When she opened the door, no one was there. Only a small wicker basket sat at her feet. Inside, a loaf of bread wrapped in linen, a jar of wildflower honey, and a folded note.
For the new neighbor. From someone who remembers what it feels like to start over.
There was no name. Lena blinked. The basket was warm, the bread freshly baked. The handwriting was neat, slanted, and unfamiliar. She didn't know what to do. She brought it inside. She didn't eat the bread right away. Instead, she left the basket on the kitchen counter and stared at it throughout the day, as if it might reveal who sent it if she watched long enough. The next morning, she made tea again, and this time, she toasted a slice of the bread. It was soft, golden, comforting. She didn't cry, but her chest ached in a way that wasn't entirely painful. It was like a door had opened, just a crack, letting in a sliver of something she hadn't felt in a long time. She stepped out onto the porch and looked down the path again. This time, she noticed the purple blooms growing along the fence. She hadn't before. The sea wind felt a little gentler. The silence, a little kinder. Part 2, The Path into Town. The next day, Lena stepped off the porch. Not far, just a few hesitant steps down the gravel path. The air smelled of salt and something faintly sweet. Maybe honeysuckle. Maybe memory. Her legs felt stiff, her heart beat louder than it should have been, but she walked until the path curved toward the wooden gate. She didn't open it. Just stood there, one hand resting on the latch. She hadn't walked this way since moving in. The idea of seeing strangers, of hearing voices or laughter, had felt too much. Too soon. But the bread basket had shifted something inside her, a quiet reminder that maybe the world hadn't entirely shut her out. She looked down and noticed a painted rock at the base of the fence, small, oval-shaped, with a sun and the word, hope, written in neat, swirling letters. She picked it up and turned it over. Nothing on the back. No signature. Just that one word. She smiled. Barely. But it was real. Lena tucked the rock into her pocket and walked back inside. The next day, another basket appeared. This one contained a bunch of fresh thyme, a small lemon tart, and a second note.
The path into town is prettier in the morning. You don't have to talk to anyone. Just walk. Let the trees keep you company.
The handwriting was the same, warm, steady, familiar now. She stared at the words for a long time, heart fluttering at the gentleness of them. She didn't know who this anonymous sender was, but they seemed to understand her in a way that felt impossible. As if they'd lived in her silence before. That evening, Lena wrote her first words in months. Just 3 lines in a blank notebook. There's kindness here. It surprises me. It doesn't rush. It waits. The next morning, she left the house earlier. The fog was still lifting as she passed the fence and pushed open the wooden gate. The path into town sloped gently down, framed by trees that swayed softly in the wind. She walked. She didn't go far, just to the stone bench that overlooked the sea. But she stayed there for nearly an hour. Watching the waves. No one disturbed her. No one asked questions. She walked home with a clearer mind. And when she returned, she left something at the gate. The painted rock, now bearing a tiny heart she'd drawn herself, and a scrap of paper with one word.
Thank you.
Part 3, Quiet Conversations. The days grew longer, warmer. Lena's walks became routine, never rushed, never too far, but consistent. The same trees, the same bench. She began to notice more, birds building nests, an old woman in a red coat who fed squirrels near the bakery, children drawing chalk suns on the sidewalks. The world had begun speaking in small ways again, and she was starting to listen. Another basket appeared at the door. This one was heavier, with a tiny potted rosemary plant inside, and a third note.
Herbs like conversation. Talk to them when you water. Start with simple things.
So she did. She placed the rosemary in the kitchen windowsill and began greeting it each morning. At first, she felt silly. But over time, it became a ritual. A whisper. A grounding. She began to talk out loud more, softly, to the air, to the house, to herself. Her voice was rough at first, like something unused, but it returned with time. Then, one cloudy afternoon, as Lena returned from the bench by the sea, she saw someone standing by her gate. A woman, older, perhaps in her 70s, wearing a green cardigan and wide-rimmed glasses. The woman looked startled.
Oh. I didn't mean to intrude. I was just dropping this off.
In her hands was another basket. Lena stared. You've been the one. The woman hesitated, then nodded.
I hope that's okay.
Lena stepped closer. Why? The woman smiled gently.
Because someone once did the same for me. Years ago. And it saved me.
Lena's throat tightened. She nodded, overwhelmed, unable to find words.
I'm Miriam.
The woman said, offering the basket.
You don't have to say anything. Just. I'm glad to finally meet you.
Lena reached out and took the basket with trembling hands. Inside, this time, was a bundle of lavender, a scone still warm, and a hand-sewn bookmark. She whispered, "Thank you." Miriam smiled.
Anytime.
And with that, she walked away. Part 4, The Little Tea Table. After meeting Miriam, Lena began leaving her gate open. Sometimes, Miriam would stop by with a new recipe. Other days, she'd bring a book, or just sit with her on the bench in silence. Lena didn't mind the quiet. In fact, she'd grown to cherish it, not as something heavy and empty, but as something shared and peaceful. One sunny morning, Miriam brought over a tiny, foldable table.
Thought it might look good on your porch.
She said.
Good for tea. Or journals.
They set it up together. Simple, white, a little chipped. That afternoon, Lena made 2 cups of tea and brought out an old journal Eleanor, her younger sister, had given her years ago. She hadn't opened it since the accident. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. Inside were notes, drawings, silly quotes they used to say as kids. Eleanor's handwriting, looping and fearless, stared back at her like a hug. Lena cried. Not the sharp sobs of early grief, but the soft, aching tears of remembrance. She looked at the tea, now slightly cooled. And for the first time, she spoke Eleanor's name aloud. I miss you. Miriam, sitting across from her, said nothing. Just placed a warm hand on hers. Later, Lena wrote in her journal. Grief doesn't vanish. But when held gently, it stops devouring. And sometimes, it makes room for love again. Part 5, Where the Light Comes In. By midsummer, the house felt different. The curtains stayed open. Sunlight pooled in corners that had once stayed dark. Lena now walked into town without fear, greeting neighbors by name. Children waved at her as she passed. The bakery owner saved her favorite loaf each Thursday. One day, she brought a basket to a new neighbor down the road. It had a scone, a candle, and a note. It's okay to take your time. This town is patient. So are we. Miriam smiled when she heard about it.
You're part of the circle now,
She said. Lena laughed, not a small smile this time, but a full sound, round and open. The porch tea table soon became her favorite spot. She drank tea in the evenings, wrote letters to Eleanor, and sometimes just listened to the sea wind. The house was still old. Still creaky. But now, it pulsed with something new. Not just healing. But life.